let's try again. You might remember this bag from my last video. Well, I did say I would make some changes if I was ever to make it again, and today is that day. It has come. I'm still going to use the silk organza, but I did say in that video that I might choose a different underlayer. So there's two layers to this bag, the inside and the outside. And I found this linen that I used for a different project, and I had a little scrap left over that was just big enough. So I'm using that. So I'm cutting one layer of this linen and one layer of the organza for each part, which is the bag body and the flap. And you'll see what I mean. I think this linen will give the bag some much needed stability and make it a little bit more sturdy, because it was quite floppy. You'll see at the end of this video, you'll see the result. It's still a little bit floppy, but it's better. I also changed some of the making aspects. So you'll see I overlocked some edges where previously they were stitched and turned inside out, and I still think it turned out all right. The inside maybe is less tidy, but it's all overlocked and neat, so yeah. So now I'm cutting out the bag flap out of the organza, and I tried to edit this down, but I had a lot to say, so I'm keeping it all in. This video is a little bit shorter than the last one. I will link the last one in the info box below if you want to see that one as well. So with this one, I had a different idea for what I was going to use as the scrap element. I kind of didn't want to use more scraps, but I did want to use something fun and funky, and my second favorite color is iridescent. If you haven't noticed, my favorite color is black. And so you'll see what I had in mind for that later on. So here I'm explaining what I'm doing. I have pinned the pieces together just to kind of keep it all in one place. I'm going to overlock one side, and then I'm going to turn it around and top stitch that overlocked side down. That will be the front end of the bag. And then I'm going to fill it with my chosen filling. So here I'm just overlocking that edge and removing the pins as we go. Always remove pins when you're using an overlocker. Do not sew or cut through pins, that's a nightmare. And then snipping off the edges there. So, and then I'm gonna overlock around the entire bag flap apart from the top, the longest part of the bag. That's gonna be open because that's where the filling is going in. So on the last bag, I stitched this neatly with the sewing machine. On this bag, I'm overlocking it neatly with my overlocker. And it actually turned out quite neat and tidy still. So I don't know why I didn't do that on the first bag. But here we are. I said in the last video, and I'll say it again, you learn from your mistakes. And some of them aren't even mistakes, you just learn from trial and error. So here we are. I have now got my filling, and it is tinsel. I had some tinsel curtains. I'm making a jacket, and you'll see that in a different video later on. But I have a lot of tinsel curtains that have been cut into sort of 10 to 15 inch strips. So I'm going to fill it with that quite randomly. It's looking a little bit stripy, which I'm not upset about. That's quite cool, but I'm trying to kind of put some on most of the areas. Some of them are sticking out. I'll be cutting those, and then I'm just sort of throwing it on at the end to kind of get a little bit of life into it and make it look less stripy. And then I'm putting the organza layer back on, and I'm putting some carefully placed pins. This tinsel didn't slip around as much as the scraps did in the last video, so I didn't have to pin everywhere. And now I am overlocking the long edges around the entire bag to kind of seal it in and lock it in. I think I still put a couple of pins here and there on the body just to kind of keep the tinsel from moving too much. But I didn't show that. So yeah, so I'm overlocking all of the long edges and sealing off the bag. So there we are, that's the result. So now I've got one neatly finished edge, which is going to be the front. and then I start quilting. Now here you can see I have actually measured and put a pin in, so this is the middle of the bag, so I'm putting the first line of stitching in, and I'm pulling ever so slightly onto the fabric to kind of just keep it taut as I'm sewing across, because I didn't want the organza to ripple and move. And then I have to decide. Now, initially I thought I'm not going to put as many stitch lines in with this one, so I thought I was just going to put one on either side and be done with it. At a later point I do change my mind, so I'll mention that. Yeah, you can see me removing the little pins that's keeping it all in place there as well, so I did do that. And then you have to go the opposite direction to make the grid. Now in the last video I said you could do any pattern, it doesn't have to be the grid. That's just how it's done in the pattern description. So there we are, I've done the quilting that I thought I was going to be needing. I do actually go in and put a line in between every single one. So yeah, I actually put twice the amount of quilting lines in. But it's holding the tinsel curtains down, and then I've got the flap, the lid for the bag there, and I'm going to do the same thing with that. So now I've put it all together, and I've overlocked the top of the bag to seal in all of the tinsel, and I'm going to attach the lid and the zip like I did in the last video. So I'm not describing. If you want to see how I did that, go and watch the Great British Sewing Bee quilted scrap bag video, which is also in the description below. So here I am putting the zip on. I'm doing it slightly different this time. I'm putting the zip underneath. Oh, this is difficult to explain. So I'm putting the zip underneath like that, as opposed to on top and then folding it back. Because I had this nice, neat, overlocked and folded back and top stitched edge already. So I'm just stitching down the top stitching on this seam here. And then on the other side, I'm attaching it to the overlocked part of the flap. I think that makes sense. I don't know if it does. If that was confusing, put a message in the comment field below and ask me to explain it better. But yes, that's what I'm doing. So that's one side of the zip, and then I'm putting the I'm cutting off the edges and the threads, and then I'm putting the flap on. On this one, it's easier to see which side is the right side, which side is the face side, because obviously the reverse side is black. So put the flap on and make sure again that it's centered so that you have equal amounts of edge on either side of the flap, because that becomes the seam allowance for the side seams. There we go, just pushing through there, so that's fine and easy. I'm not being too careful with finishing or fastening the seams at the ends here. I'm kind of ploughing through to make it a little bit quicker. Again, I'm putting my label on. It's my pink and turquoise, pink and blue diamond pearl label that maybe fits a little bit better on this iridescent filling. And again, I've changed my top thread to a white thread, so it's invisible or less visible on the label. The bobbin thread underneath is still black because that is the inside of the bag. And like I did in the last video, close to the edge, and then walk the needle to the corner of the label, put the needle down and the foot up and swivel. So yeah, we've gone through this before. I could do a more sort of close-up or in-depth video on how I put my labels on, if anyone is interested in that. I could also explain what I mean when I'm changing my top thread to a white thread and the bottom thread stays black, if that is of any interest. So there we are, that's the label on. Long threads, so I can pull them through to the other side and then I can stitch them in and hide them. So now I'm turning the bag inside out and I'm lining up the zip on the other side, just like I did on the last bag. It is actually once you've done it, it's a relatively easy bag to make. And like I said in the last video as well, you don't have to do it with scraps or tinsel or any form of filling. You could actually make this bag with just 2 layers of plain fabric or pattern fabric. It doesn't have to be sheer. So there we are now. I've changed over to the zipper foot again, and I'm just going to run a stitch along here to attach the zip, and I'm holding the thread at the back to kind of A, stop it from being sucked into the seam and making a nice knot, and B, to kind of just guide the fabric through the machine as well. I don't pull on the fabric, I just kind of like hold it in place. And then when you get to the zip pull, just put the needle through the fabric, raise the foot, and then slide the pull to the other end so you don't have the bulk. Then cut off the threads, and now I'm turning it back inside out or outside in, I think, just to check that the zip works. And the flap kind of comes over like that. And then I have to turn it back inside out so that I can do the side seams and the bottom corners. So here we are. Oh, I'm doing a top stitch here. So where the flap attaches to the body, I decided if I do a top stitch along the flap to kind of sew it down onto the body, then it doesn't flap up as easily. So which was happening with the other bag. This is quite tricky because it's already like a cylinder, so you have to squeeze it through, and making sure that your seam is as straight as possible whilst you're doing this is a little bit of a challenge, but it is possible. So there we are. I've done the top stitch, cut off the threads. All of the thread ends will be hidden inside the next seams anyway. So there we are. The lid is lidding. It's sitting flat. And then I'm going to turn it inside out. I'm going to put the loops on either side for the bag handle. I'm going to put a button, a little magnetic button on the flap and the body, like I did with the last one. This time I'm using silver hardware. So yeah, I skipped the whole doing the side seams on this one because it's the exact same process, and the bottom corners as well. So if you're interested in seeing how I did that, go and watch the original Great British Sewing Bee quilted scrap bag video. Poor angle here, sorry. You can barely see me stitching, but I'm hand stitching the little magnetic buttons onto the bag. I did set up the camera to kind of film what I was doing, and then I didn't sit in the right space, so apologies if that's completely useless footage. But you've probably sewn on a button on a bag or on a garment before. And then using that button to place the opposite end of the magnet and stitching that in place as well. Quite quick and easy, just making sure that it looks neat and it's squared off as well, because it has 4 little loops on either corner, so you want that to look as neat and tidy as possible. Because it's organza overlaid on linen, I'm trying to make sure that I don't just sew through the organza, but that I'm actually catching the linen underneath as well, which is tricky because at one point I have to sew through the plastic. So I'm trying to make it as neat as possible on the outside and on the inside at the same time. And we're done. Snip off the thread and see if it works. Yeah, that button's good placement. Now, there's the loops, and I need to put a handle on. I originally bought this handle and it arrived. I hadn't read to see how long it was, so that's way too short. And then I found this handle, which is actually almost a better match. It's actually 2 handles because it came in a pack of 2, and these plastic handles are quite easy to join. Sadly, it has gold rings as the hardware on it, and I put a silver button in. But I do have some silver rings somewhere, so I'm going to change that. So that's the handle that's going on this bag. A little jump ring on either side there, quite easy to attach. And there we are. That's pretty much it. So, iridescent, I'm holding it out as shot, aren't Oh well, it's a cute little bag. Would you make it?